March 18th was Global Recycling Day. And this year there's a specific focus on the recycling fraternity, highlighting the work of those on the front line of recycling. Today, we feature the work of Recycling Partners of Jamaica, RPJ. We talked to Nalini A. Sooklal, General Manager at RPJ, who has worked in the environmental sector and waste management for over a decade. She sat with us to talk about the goals and purpose of the RPJ, the process of recycling, the challenges in fulfilling its mandates, and how we all can help. Enjoy! Let's start out with our first question. What is the Recycling Partners of Jamaica?
Yes, it's a question we actually get asked quite a bit, who we are and where we're heading and why we're important. But Recycling Partners of Jamaica, or RPJ for short, we are a public-private sector organization that was actually started in 2014. However, in about March of 2019, under a newly appointed board of directors, the RPJ was identified as the lead body, ideally, to implement the DRS, or the Deposit Refund System, for plastic bottles in Jamaica. My apologies for the jargon, but in our industry, there's a lot of jargon. So RPJ is, in summary, our vision, ideally, when the company was created, is to contribute to the development and the maintenance of a sustainable recycling and collection system for plastics within what we've termed an engaged Jamaica, or an aware Jamaica, in terms of recycling efforts. And so our mission then, derived from where we were set up, is to really establish partnerships, ideally, and to facilitate activities between all types of individuals, citizens, and of course government agencies, to maintain what we've termed a prosperous and productive Jamaican recycling system. And it's very large, the vision, of course, and the mandate and the mission, of course. But we do believe very passionately in what we do and the reason that we're doing it. So just a little bit in terms of who our partners are. Our current corporate partners and the founding partners of the RPJ include the key bottlers and for example, the Wasinko Group Limited, Pepsi Cola Jamaica, Grace Foods and Services Limited, Jamaica Beverages, Lasco Manufacturing, Tradewinds, and Sepron as well. So those are our key players. The board of directors is chaired by Dr. Damian King, who is an economist by profession and the lead of Capri, which is our regional think tank. And also supported by a number of persons from across various sectors, other NGOs and CBOs across Jamaica. So we have quite a broad remit, and as true to how we were set up, a public-private partner entity, gleaning the best from all industries towards this very important mission. We have recognized, however, if I may deviate, that there is indeed a need for other bottlers and manufacturers and distributors to join us. The list that I called out is not exhaustive by any way. And so we've recognized who ought to be joining the RPJ, and we are working very closely with the JMA, the Jamaica Manufacturers and Export Association, to engage more persons, more entities, more businesses to come on board and join us in our mission. So I hope I've captured a bit of the essence of the RPJ, who we are, why we were formed, and who our current and proposed partners are as we move forward with this mission.
Yes, that encompassed a lot, and it even went as far as to answer a number of the questions that I was going to ask. So I would like to find out, what is the thought process when you decide which direction you're going in, who you partner with, and what materials you choose to recycle? Right now, you are recycling PPE and HDPE, sorry, PET
Yes.
and HDPE.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes,
sorry
yes.
about that. So what is the reason behind those two? How is it more viable?
Yeah. So It's quite interesting that you ask, and of course, yeah, thank you for highlighting that. We recycle PET and HTP, or 1 and 2 on the range of plastic scales. And we often make the delineation by asking persons just to look at the bottom of any container that they have, and there's actually a numbered system for plastics. And of that numbered system, 1 and 2 are PET and HTP. The why, in terms of why PET and HTP, when we looked at the data, and by way of production and distribution and consumption data, this is not isolated to Jamaica. I believe if we look data, we'll see similarly. In terms of the amount of PET and HTP generated and consumed, it's the key culprit when it comes to plastic pollution in regards to our environment. So the rationale really was, let us focus on the key culprit. Let's just focus on the main type of plastic that is utilized and consumed within our society, and by consequence disposed of in this society. So we the ones that require focus, and of course, notwithstanding that there are other types of plastic and there are other types of pollutants as well that are improperly disposed of. So it was not a competitive way, but it was a matter of, let's just see what are the main ones that we ought to focus on. And so that's where the focus has been. For reference, Jamaicans, visitors, and even overseas customers and consumers, PET and HDP bottles per annum or per year. So, it's a significant amount. Of course, of that 800 million, over 80% of these are not recycled, and therefore they end up either at waste disposal sites, or the dumps, as we say, or alternatively in the ambient environments, land or the sea. And, without preaching to what I'm, a lot of the ramifications of that improper disposal is rampant. We at RBG have been, we've been focusing as well, some of our marketing, on the why. Why should you recycle? Why? Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of effort from you, in the sense that you have to be conscious. You have to maybe have a separate bin at home. You have to train your family members have to be aware, your community. Why are we doing it? And we have been highlight the why to Jamaicans, because when you recognize the reason that you're doing something, it becomes, you're more motivated, and you understand why you're doing this. And tying back things like flooding, annual flooding, damage to marine life, spread of disease, and all of these things are associated with improper disposal of plastics in our environment. Pollution of, other nations as well. We're an island chain, and we often see that the sea is a bottles moving in between islands as well, and so that's a bit of the why. From a legal side as well, we're Jamaica and many other Caribbean islands are signatory to a number of multilateral conventions as well, and then those conventions require us to protect our environment. So I think we've seen a more conscious youth. We've seen more young persons clamoring and being educated and understanding the why, and having a lot of this change. So that's a little bit of why the PET and HDP, of course.
Yes, thank you. That was a great answer. So can I ask what happens to the products when they're recycled? That 800 million?
Sure. Okay. Well, not 800 million yet. We're getting there.
Oh, right.
So just for yes, that's our overarching goal, of course, that we will get to over 80% of recycled plastic in Jamaica. So it's an ambitious, as you would imagine, it's an ambitious target by any measure. We want to recuperate over 80% of that plastic. So just some statistics as well, so we know where we're at and where we have to get to, which I said is to over 80%. For 2019, the recovery percentage, and of course the recovery percentage is very simple. It's what we have collected for recycling divided by what is generated and sold into the environment. So how much have we recovered from the plastics that's put out into the environment? And so for 2019, that percentage fluctuated between 8 and 12%. And in 2020, between 3 to 13%. I have not to tell anyone, but everybody knows 2020 particularly brought some unique challenges. We saw periodic disruptions in our efforts and services. And so, you know, like any other business or entity, we were adapting and moving with the challenges that we were facing. For 2021, between 4.9 to 17.9%. So we saw definitely an uptick in our collections, approaching 18% recovery. And we've set an ambitious target of 24% for 2022. And we are hoping through organizations like yours and partnering with other very conscious NGOs and CBOs and motivating the citizenry of Jamaica, we are going to get to that target. So it's a number of things that we'll talk about in terms of what RPJ is doing to make sure we get to that target. And of course, on our end, we are largely focused on providing the infrastructure required to support the recycling efforts. Because when we call upon the citizens to recycle, we have to provide, well, where do I recycle? Where are the bins? Where are the cages? Where are the depots? How do I get there? What do I get for it? And those are some questions we'll answer later on. In terms of the process, and one that lots of persons ask, because I mean, when you put this amount of effort into recycling, you know, and of course, recycling as an added benefit, you know, reduces the amount of plastics that are going into the dump and protecting our ecosystems. We are saying that, you know, give it to us, we're going to recycle it. So what happens in that instance? And you know, where does the plastic go is a question that we're often asked. So once we that regard, so we pick up from the cages, we pick up from public spaces, we encourage persons to bring them into our depots even. What happens is that it's stored. Firstly, it's inspected and sorted. So what we ask of you at home is to just make sure you do the preliminary sorting, if we call it that. You just make sure that you're sending us plastics PET and HTP or 1 and 2. So, you know, that's your preliminary sorting. So we receive PET 1 and they're further sorted. And they're sorted by type firstly. So we separate all of the PET from the HTP because they're different grades of plastic. And then it is sorted by color furthermore. And once that happens, we then bale it. They're baled. If they need to be sanitized, they're sanitized in that regard. And at the moment in Jamaica, our baled plastic is actually heading off island to a recycling facility in Nicaragua. We had a part the flaking process and pelletization process was happening on island. Flaking, of course, is the process where the plastic material is essentially chopped into very fine pieces. It's washed and sanitized through a heat process. And that grind, as we call it, or that plastic grind, is then packaged for shipment. And it's treated as a raw material or a new material because it can then be incorporated into various sectors, you know, rubber mats, toys, fabric, is one of the key areas that we've integrated PET components into. So at present, that process happens off island. We are currently in discussions to restart that process on island and recognizing that we want to have an element of circularity on island. And circularity is that term that's, I wouldn't say replacing sustainability, but we're looking at it from all aspects. So from generation, through consumption, through collection, and through reuse and recycling, the cycle is completed on island, all elements of the process are managed. So That is what happens to our plastics. So at the point of being sorted, sanitized, and baled, they're sent to this processing facility where they're flaked, and that flake then is then used as a raw material for integration into other downstream industries. And so that element of the process, we're trying to reclaim and restart on island in order to achieve some element of circularity.
Yes, that all sounds good. I see that you're making strides to fulfill your mandate and upping the percentage as the years go by. But what are some challenges that you face in fulfilling your mandate?
I'm sorry, Dalia. I unfortunately did not catch the last part of that question. I'm going to ask if you can repeat it for
No
me.
problem. What challenges do you face in fulfilling your mandate?
Well, it's generally a challenge in the sense that we are trying to inculcate what we've termed, and that cultural change essentially is asking persons to come on board and to do things differently. And I would say at the end of the day, that is some of our biggest challenge in order to get the public motivated and understanding why we need to recycle. As I said, it's different. It's very different from the way that we're used to doing things. Very much we see a lot of practices burning of garbage and trash. For some persons, disposal means putting it in a river or a gully, and that's disposal. And so, rewiring the public's approach to plastic is one of our key challenges. Of course, as with any new business and building out a system, there are, what we call trials and error in that sense. What works best, what type of bin works best, where are the convenient locations that we can put it, how can we make recycling accessible and convenient, because we've recognized that once we look at those two elements, once we don't take persons out of their regular routine. So where can we put a recycling a cage, for example? People go to the grocery, people go to the gas station, they have to pick up kids at school. There's a community center. We're trying to integrate the regular routines of persons' lives in order to make recycling accessible to us. We've grown as a company as well. We've been working on our logistics, ensuring that when we say we're coming to pick up our plastics, we are there. That our bins are maintained, and they don't look like garbage bins. They're very, beautiful.
Very
they're
colorful.
branded,
Yeah.
and when you look at it, you really feel hard pressed to throw your garbage in there. Although some people see a bin and automatically it says, okay, let me go and put all my trash in there. But, so it's a learning curve, and there's several challenges that we face, and I'm sure we'll continue to face. What we've recognized, Davia, is as we go across the island, each community is a little bit different. They're motivated a little bit differently. The topography of the island is different, and so it's a bit of a unique process. It's not as cookie cutter as we'd like to think, especially in terms of how we reach.
Okay, you cut out there at the end a bit, but thank you. That was illuminating. It takes a lot of consideration, is what we're learning. So I want to know, what can we, the citizens, do to help, and that can be us as SCOs and NGOs as well as individuals.
And I'm really happy that you've asked that question, because as I said, interestingly enough, at least in the last 6 months, we've been receiving a and CBOs that are established across Jamaica. And we have been partnering with a number of networks: the Caribbean Tree Planting Association, the Sustainable Livelihoods Network, the diaspora organizations, and the support has been tremendous. What we've asked, and the beauty about these organizations is that they're already established either geographically within a community or within a body of persons, and they have reach. and they're able to
Right.
assist us in communities, in getting on the ground, in finding out how we can motivate some of these persons. And they've been quite helpful. You know, a lot of times these organizations know communities and they can say to us, well, this is a great location for a cage. Let us go and do site visits. Let's find a community, a secondary community group that's going to adopt the cage, that's going to help us to motivate the public around it. And so these organizations have come on board, and as I mentioned, it's a vast number of organizations. Despite the mandate, we've these community-based organizations have connections and rapport and relationships with the communities, and they're able to assist us greatly with the motivation factors. They're able to assist us many times with the operations in terms of where do we put a cage, what's a good location, how, you know, which community group do we deal with, who are the persons on the ground. So we've encouraged many organizations, once there's interest or affiliation with a community group or an organization or a body table, really, we found many ways to collaborate. Diaspora organization, for example, said, you know, we have reached in a number of communities. Let's go ahead and see how we can inculcate some recycling programs there. And it has worked. A lot of our partnerships are successful. We partner not just with NGOs and CBOs. We are about to relaunch our schools program. And pre-COVID, as I like to say, we had quite a schools were a big part of our collections. We started the program as a bit of a competition, and we've transitioned the program to where each school, for their whatever plastics they collect, they're remunerated, and those funds go towards the school for use in whatever areas that they need support in. So we are about to relaunch our schools program. As kids are going back out to schools, everyone's going back out into schools and workplaces, and we're resuming slowly for that, and say it very cautiously. We are about to launch that schools program again, the schools reactivated, as we like to say. So there are many areas, you know, recycling is not an activity just for adults. It's not for just certain communities. It's really expansive, and everybody's responsible, because ideally when we examine our days, we come into contact with plastic over and over and over and over, you know, and we can begin to internalize how we're going to contribute to the change. And part of it, Davian, I wanted to share how are we going about with this motivation factor. And RBJ currently offers 50 Jamaican dollars per kilogram of plastic. And that's roughly about 1 Jamaican dollar per bottle, because a kilogram, which is just about 2.2 pounds, is just about 50 bottles in terms of PET bottles of, you know, about $1 Jamaican per bottle, but we usually go by weight, so it's $50 per kilogram of bottles. And that, we believe, is a motivation factor for a lot of persons. We've actually seen it work as a motivational factor for a lot of persons. And so we've been also trying to encourage and tie back recycling as an entrepreneurial activity. You know, COVID has been a difficult time. There's been many losses of jobs in many cases. And so we've really sought to look at and tying back recycling as an entrepreneurial activity. And we've seen a lot of groups, some women's groups become organized and going out there and collecting plastics as a source of income. And we've encouraged organizations who host a cage, for example, the schools, the churches, any organization that hosts a cage, their proceeds that go towards whatever the cause. And by extension, we encourage persons and the public to go to these cages. So if you drop off a bag of plastics at your church, for example, that's a donation in a sense, because there's a monetary value that's now attached to each piece of PET and HTP on the island. And we really believe that's a motivational factor. and we hope, to highlight that to a lot of organizations who are coming on board, that hey, this can be really, really a business in a sense. And soon we'll be publishing, and you'll see in the media, we are highlighting our top performers, as we're calling them, for 2021. Persons who have earned substantive sums of money from recycling. And our rationale for highlighting them is to show the public, this is you, this could be you. There's nothing, absolutely nothing precluding you and I from going out there and collecting plastics and earning from it.
That makes total sense. I think the collection, that the cage that Chilitos, they were offering maybe free drinks or something that you could bring in your bottles and get a free drink, as well as Hope Zoo had
Yes.
you could bring in certain amount of bags and get in free. We did that one year with our foundation, the I'm Glad I'm a Girl Foundation. We carried the bottles and got free visits to the zoo for all the girls that were at our camp that year. And it was just such a fun and important experience for them to see that there's value in recycling and that they can, go to places and do different things. So it's a really beautiful plan and idea. So is it that any company or business that wants to start that wants to offer their customers something and get that, can just apply for a cage in their area?
Sure. And we're encouraging persons and corporate Jamaica to come on board. Our website is recyclingja.com. It has a lot of our contact information. And, once host, as we call the size currently is 6 feet by 6 feet by 6 feet. So it's just under the size of a parking space, maybe about half of a parking space. And once you have a space that can safely house a cage, really and truly, we encourage any organizations to come out, reach out to us. Our Chilitos cage has been, as you've mentioned it, one of our long-standing locations, and I think a very popular one as well. And, our intent really is to make recycling, as I said, convenient. A number of gas stations, all of the locations actually. Our website is, we're currently rebuilding some aspects of it, but it's generally our go-to, as well as our social media platforms, our Instagram, our Twitter, our TikTok, our YouTube. We're using as many, or all I should say, of the social platforms that we can to convey information, to engage with the public. So, you can find a cage near to you. And as I said, it's our intention to go island wide and make it as convenient as we can. Island. Of course, we acknowledge the population density centers, because our approach and our work has to also be data driven, and so we look at population densities, we look at consumption data as well, in terms of where the clusters of consumption, and of course the Kingston St. Andrew area is densely populated, and so by way of that alone, there's a keen focus. But we have operations in Negril. Our depot has just been refurbished. We have in Bogue in Montego Bay. We're working on Mayfair, St. Anne. So we have St. Mary. We have St. Thomas as well. That's one of our depots that was recently relaunched. So we're trying to touch each and every parish, each and every area of Jamaica, to ensure that recycling is accessible. So our website is a great source of information by that. And then, of course, our more fun platforms like TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and all of it. So we've had some great successes in that way, reaching the youth and through our schools program that's going to be hitting the ground soon. We'd get the younger ones engaged, and I must say though, they're really, really champions of recycling. Prior to schools being closed, they really grasped it, and they really had been engaged in recycling and acknowledging what they were doing, and really having that impact at a young age. I think we're setting the tone for that cultural change that we want to see in terms of this.
Exactly. Children really hold on to something really well, and they just get active and involved. And then it's just built in their culture after that. So it's a beautiful way to start off with the young.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And as we
And
always
they are
say,
conscious as well. They go home and say, "No, mommy, that is not where it goes.
okay,
What are you doing? I have to put that in the recycle bin." So
yeah,
they tend to be quite diligent, and they can motivate the older generations who are stuck in their ways as well. They're just a little voice in the back of you.
yeah. All right, it's been a great interview. Thank you again for coming and sharing with us. And on Global Recycling Day, I hope that everyone starts to hear the message, start to really get involved and be the message and not just, put it at the back of their heads. And when this happens, I will, because you are here to facilitate their recycling. So it's no
Correct.
longer, okay, I can plan for this when I have this or that. You have the
Yeah.
tools right here and you're making it as accessible as possible all across the island and in the Caribbean.
And yeah, thank you for that, Abby. And of course, as I mentioned, there are some incentives that we are very open to partnerships with schools, with business organizations, with NGOs and CBOs, anybody that has a reach in that regard or is willing to make a difference. We're partnered with a number of youth groups who are always very engaging and excited, football clubs, really and truly be an environmental organization to recycle. The tie doesn't exist because, as I mentioned, every one of us in every aspect of our day at some point in time, we either consume something that's in plastic or we utilize something that's in plastic or HDP. So definitely it's not, you have to be an environmentalist or you have to be a tree hugger or you have to be passionate about, we all come across plastic and therefore we each have a response. We are islands, our economies are heavily dependent on our oceanic health, the health of our ecosystems, our riverine systems, and we really just have to take some responsibility at the end of the day for what we're consuming, and more importantly, of how we're disposing what we're consuming. So we have had a beautiful jingle sung by Agent Sasko. I'm sure you perhaps have heard it on the radio, and we have a video associated. It really iterates and visualizes that it's time.
Right.
We can't put this off. You're a youth organization focused on climate change. You can't put it off anymore. It's not, when the time comes, we'll deal with it. These things are cumulative, and really and truly the time is now. And so, as we've said in a lot of our campaigning, the time for change is now.
Yes, that is
We can't wait, the
a
time for
beautiful
change
way
is
to
now.
end it. Yeah, the
Yeah.
time
So
for
I'm going to
change.
drive all of your traffic through to our websites, our on Instagram, we're on YouTube at Recycling JA, TikTok. I know it's a lot of young viewers, um, and just even if it's just to find out a bit of our mission, as I said, to understand the whys, and then it's a progression. Once you understand why, you're going to want to know how can I do it, and we're also there to answer a lot of those questions and to assist with that. So. Thank you for having
Absolutely.
me. It's been a great discussion.
Thank you for coming. It has been. Thank you. All right. And thank you for watching. You can help by taking your recyclables to any of these locations and by following RPJ on social media. Links are in the description. Bye.